biohacking, performance, mastery, mindset, holistic health. This is a show about getting better every single day. I'm on a mission, guys, to help over 1 million people get healthy and lose weight. Why? Because when you lose weight and get healthy, you have higher self-esteem. You have more self-confidence. And that person goes out and crushes their goal and starts living the highest version of themselves, and then they have way more impact on the world. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another amazing Health Hack Friday. Today's episode, I'm going to actually go into the top 5 nutrients that you need to boost your mood. And here's the reason why. You know, earlier this week, I did a podcast talking about depression and anxiety, and is there something related to our diet that can help improve this? And it's interesting, I was actually looking through Twitter, which I know you should never do that. Why would you do that, Joel? But I was doing that later in the evening, and I guess an article had just been released saying that there's no statistical evidence that antidepressants or anything actually work. And there's some study going on, and there's some study that was just released showing that it has no ability to actually correct the imbalances in the brain. I reached out to that person who tweeted that, and I saw a couple other tweets from other people as well. So there's something that I missed. I'm sure this study is legit and there's something going about it, but when I find out more, I'll let you know. It's just really interesting because I had no idea that was going to come out. And I've been talking about this concept because I really do believe that there is no such thing as a disease state like depression. I think that we get into these states, we find ourselves there, but there's so many components to holistic health and natural health. And one of the key ways is obviously our movement, our lifestyle, our breath, our relationships, our tribe. And the nutrition aspect is huge, right? Because if we have the right nutrition, we're going to get the right input, and that's going to give us the right neurotransmitters to make us feel good, to make us feel happy. And so on that note, I want to go and just do a quick episode talking about the top 5 nutrients that are going to be able to help you boost your mood. And at the end, I'm actually going to even give you 2 extra supplements that you may want to consider to boost mood, because what they do is actually they fight stress. And so most of us are in a stress state. And so if we can mitigate and buffer stress better, then we can probably improve mood, right? Fatigue, anxiety, all those kinds of things. So let's get into it. Let's get in the top 5 supplements that is going to actually been proven through good studies to actually help lift your mood. So the first one is magnesium. I talked about this earlier in the week when we were looking at diets like the Mediterranean diet, which are, more, I'd say complete and better nutrition, better for the gut microbiome. But magnesium is a big one. And low magnesium was actually associated with low testosterone. And low testosterone, guess what, is associated with low mood in men and also in women. So magnesium, we know, also is responsible for over 300 enzymatic expressions. So it's really, really good for multiple cofactors that it's going to help with, like vitamin B, vitamin D, zinc, all of these minerals. So it is a cofactor in many other minerals, and so it's really important. It's really good for the brain also. There's some preliminary evidence showing that it actually modifies NMDA receptors, which is a type of glutamate. And we know that glutamate is like an excitatory, it triggers excitatory neurons. And so if there's an imbalance of a glutamate, and you can think of glycine as actually being kind of the one that's going to tip you back in a more balanced ratio, glycine is going to be more calming. Same thing with magnesium, calming for the nervous system in that parasympathetic state, bringing the nervous system down, helping buffer stress. It's going to be huge. I think 80% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. So this is a big one. Anxiety disorders also, they've shown, tend to have lower levels of magnesium. They did a systematic review of 18 interventions looking at supplementation with people with anxiety. They did a triple blind randomized controlled study, and they didn't really see that much of a difference. So, they always say more studies have to be done, but it didn't seem to alleviate any postpartum anxiety or depression. But again, we know why magnesium is so important, and I've seen people's sleep, restless leg syndrome, and other things improve just by supplementing with magnesium. So that's a big one I would look at. You also lose magnesium through sweat. All right. So athletes definitely want to take special care of their magnesium intake. right? Same thing with zinc, and we'll kind of talk about that. But that's going to be, obviously for weight control and other things as well. So be careful you don't do too much magnesium. You could have disaster pants, right? I would definitely say avoid magnesium oxide. It's probably the least bioavailable, which is why you see companies that use magnesium oxide, there's like 400% of your RDA. Well, of course it is, because they know that none of this is being absorbed anyway, so they do these extreme amounts. I do like magnesium citrate, maybe at nighttime. I think that's a good one overall for that calming effect. Magnesium glycinate is tried and true, and it's cheap. I think Doctor's Best is a decent brand and been tried and true. Now is another good brand. And you can get it for like $12. I think it's like a 30 or 60-day supply, and it works. So I would look for anything like glycinate, citrate. 3-8 is really good for the brain. And you can do even like a combo blend. So check those out. The second big nutrient to boost mood is going to be zinc. They did a cross-sectional study with 14,000 Americans, men and women. So it was like half and half. And between 2009 and 2014, and they found an association between depression and zinc deficiency. Now, earlier this week, I talked about diet intervention, the Mediterranean diet, and using that as a driver to interrupt depression, interrupt anxiety, because I think there are some nutritional, and of course there's mindset things that we can do too, but we see that a healthy, balanced diet is going to help change the input of the diet. And one of the things that we saw, was low magnesium and low zinc. So no surprise there. Supplemental zinc's also been shown to be very effective, and it helps make antidepressant therapies more effective. That's what the studies are showing. Similar low zinc levels, men, listen up, may impair testosterone production. And we saw that earlier, right? Low T is associated with low mood in both men and women. So zinc can be very helpful for that. The interesting thing, and zinc, I remember I did a hair tissue mineral analysis a few years back, and I was taking a multivitamin and a zinc supplement at night, because I just felt like zinc is going to help with my immunity, and zinc is going to help with my overall stress. I had a pretty stressful life as a first responder, working really late hours, not getting enough sleep. And I wanted to keep my immunity robust. And I remember when I got my hair tissue mineral analysis done, the health coach looking over my test said, "You're low in zinc. I think you need to, or you're like just like barely at the baseline, right? I want you to probably supplement with, or what are you doing for zinc?" She asked me. And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm taking the multi and I'm doing a zinc copper supplement at night." And she's like, "Oh, you better keep doing that then." So yeah, you could just see that. And I said a while back on a podcast, hey, listen, if you are creating these deficiencies, we need to figure out what toxicity is in your body that's creating that deficiency. I also had a little bit of candida, yeast overgrowth in my gut. So I probably had to clear up some of these things so that I didn't have to over supplement with so much zinc. But I just want to show you, like, here's a person who was taking plenty of dosage and I was still at the baseline level. So we can see how that depletion is happening. And I had a pretty well-balanced diet, also. Just be careful when you are supplementing with zinc. And I mentioned the zinc supplement that I was using. I was also using copper. It was a zinc copper combination, actually with vitamin C, which is a nice cofactor, right? Also great for immunity. But it can lead to copper deficiency. So if you're doing an overabundance of zinc, you can deplete copper. So you want to have that in balance. I kind of mentioned too, right? If you have gut issues, and I've been talking to a lot of clients lately, and just reaching out on the web and hearing a lot of people with Crohn's disease, celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, you're not going to absorb these things as well. You're not going to be getting your nutrients. So you're definitely going to have to probably supplement in the interim as we start to rebuild that gut, rebuild that digestion, so that you can properly digest these amazing minerals, right? All right, the third one is vitamin D. That one comes up all the time with depression and vitamin D, right? But vitamin D insufficiency, it's estimated to actually affect about 40% of Americans. Okay, so it's a big deal. You can actually go get your vitamin D levels ran using the 25 hydroxy vitamin D blood test. That's a general marker that most people use. Here's the thing, though, like the baseline of this is 20. If you see, it's like 20 nanoliters. And that's the baseline when you go get a test. And so if you're above 20, they say, all right, you're at least, I don't want to say you're optimal, but you're okay. You're not, you don't, whatever, you're basic. And the problem that we're seeing from the functional medicine side thing is you want to be actually like in the 60s to 80s. People were there in the 60s to 80s throughout the pandemic. There were studies done with the C word virus, and they didn't have the cytokine storm. They weren't suffering from the long C. They weren't they weren't in the hospital. They were beating this thing, no problem. Same thing with cancer. And so 60 to 80. So if you think of it, you're 20 and doctor's like, hey, you're normal. You're you're still like really, really low. So you want to at least bump it into the 40 to 60 range, and then 60 to 80 is even showing even better. So think about that. During the winter months, you're going to be getting a lot of less sun, and that's going to be a problem. So people obviously suffer from that seasonal affective disorder, which has been associated with a decrease in vitamin D. And that's due to that UVB, the less exposure of UVB. Now, here's a couple options that you have, right? Obviously, get outside. Even when it's not sunny, you're still getting some of those sun rays. Now, you can also invest in like a Spectra. I think it's a Spectra vitamin D lamp, and those have been said to be. I don't have one, but those have been said to be pretty good, and actually work. So I would invest in something like that. Obviously, you're gonna have to start leaning on more foods like fish and sardines and fatty fish, because that's the only way you're really going to get extra vitamin D from the food. It can be kind of difficult, right? You can supplement as well. The general dosage is 800 to 2000. You could probably go higher than that. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I can't recommend treat or cure disease, but that's just what we're seeing in general. And then look again for the toxicities, right? I did a great podcast with Dr. Stephanie Seneff talking about glyphosate, talking about these other factors that are going to limit your ability to synthesize vitamin D. And so if we can remove those toxicities and get less of them, then it's going to be very critical for you. And it's going to be very helpful for you to actually absorb that vitamin D and feel like you don't have to over supplement. Obviously, people are taking 5,000 to 10,000 IUs and no one's dying and they're doing really well. But the idea is, why do we have to keep over supplementing? So if you can get it from your diet, obviously fatty fish, I think, is the best. And then at least a bare minimum of 2,000 IUs. And there's some good supplements out there. You want to make sure also you get the vitamin D3 with K2, right? If you just take vitamin D3 alone, there is issues with it actually being calcified in the arteries, and the K2 is going to actually help it synthesize better and get into the bones where we want it, right? We want these big, healthy, strong bones, and we don't want that getting anywhere and calcifying more of our arteries. That would be terrible. So make sure you get the K2 with it. The third one, omega-3 fatty acids, right? They've done some 3 large systematic reviews of observational studies, and they showed that these randomized control studies of fish oil actually could alleviate clinical depression, right? So we see these omega-3 fatty acids great for brain health, right? No surprise there. Lowers inflammation. And interestingly enough, everyone touts DHA, but they're actually saying, hey, we see actually a good effect of higher amounts of EPA seems to reduce depression better than DHA. So, I know my naturopath and my mentor also has seen the same thing. And when he wants to boost people's omega-3, anytime he does an omega-3 test, people usually, like 99% of people, still show up low. And he uses a higher ratio of EPA to DHA. I know that everyone touts DHA for brain health and that it's really good and you shouldn't even do fish oil, do krill oil. Hey, look at the studies and see what works. And then guess what? Test, retest, see what works best for you. Obviously, we have vegans and people out there that can't get it. I couldn't recommend more than, you're never going to get the amount that you would get from like fish, but you can get it from algae, which would be probably your next best bet if you're not going to eat seafood. And I would look at something like Energy Bits. Catherine Arnston, I did 2 amazing podcasts with her. She talks about algae and chlorella and spirulina, and you can get a nice conversion of ALA, which is going to convert to that EPA and DHA. So look at her Energy Bits. If you use the code Joel, Joel, and you can get 20% off her website, Energy Bits. Check out the podcast, the Hack Life podcast. For those of you, I'm saying this because I'm live on some channels, and so you might not know, but this is also a recorded. Some of you listen to the podcast, you're like, why would you say that? But I'm also live on multiple channels online right now. And so check out the Hack Life podcast, check out Catherine Arnston, and you can see we had 2 amazing interviews. We do deep dives into why it's such a powerful superfood. All right, the last big nutrient that's going to help lift your mood is tryptophan. That's an essential amino acid, which means that your body can't synthesize it, and you actually have to get it through food. So your body needs you to consume at least about 4 milligrams of tryptophan per kilogram of body weight. And why is tryptophan a big deal? Because it produces serotonin, which is the happy molecule, the happy mood molecule, right? That's what they call it. And they saw that a diet rich in tryptophan actually had less anxiety, less irritability, and less depression. Now, some researchers, the total amount of tryptophan ingested is less important, they say, than the ratio of tryptophan to your other amino acids. So, just because they're competing for the same transporter. Okay. So you can look at you're going to have to look at prioritizing tryptophan-rich foods, right? Seeds, nuts, meat, fish, milk, eggs, oats, things like that. It shouldn't be too hard to get that in your diet if you're having a complete, balanced diet. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. And the last thing, guys, I want to talk to you about is you're doing all those things, but let's say you just have a stressful life, and that's what's causing you to be, not getting enough good things to balance your mood. Or maybe you're just busy and you are stressed and your mood is a reflection of your stress. There's two big supplements that have been tried and true in terms of adaptogens, and that's rhodiola and ashwagandha. Both these supplements, I think 500 milligrams of ashwagandha twice a day, been really, really good. Helps with depression, mood swings, irritability. And they've been tried and true. I'd say a daily dose, what we're seeing is for rhodiola rosea is about 50 milligrams, and that's going to help you fight fatigue. The other one, again, I mentioned ashwagandha. I would be looking probably 500 milligrams twice a day, 300 to 500. Yeah, with breakfast. I would do I would probably do lunch and dinner because we're most stressed, during that time period. So you want to kind of, you want to bring cortisol down as we start to lean into the night. So if you're doing it, depending on your day is, I have no idea, but in general, I'd say maybe like some at lunch and some at dinner. You can supplement a pill there. That'd be my recommendation. But again, I can't recommend cure, treat, or disease. These are just suggestions and you can do what you want. All right, guys, I hope this was useful for you guys, especially after we just came off this amazing, we talk about depression and how do we lift mood through diet and mitigate these things. Have an amazing weekend. And if you have any questions, reach out to me at Joel Evan Coaching. You can get me on Instagram at Joel Evan Coaching, or you can shoot me an email, info@joelevancoaching, and I'm happy to connect with you guys there. Have an amazing weekend. Be blessed. Stay safe. I'm out of here.